My Daughter, My Wife. Episode 5. Sola and Andy departed Chicago the next day together, and though she had told him so much in very little amount of words, he began to feel guilty for being of same gender with the one that made her face that level of disappointment she had faced. She was quite in a chatty mood, and they talked about so many things, making their long flight seem like it was just a few hours' flight, and their appearance like age-long friends. When they touched down Nigeria, their official SUV was already there to take them back to the office, and it seemed as if the other guys in their team were just strays that they picked up along the way. He kept thinking about how she seemed to have forgotten that he once tried to get down with her, as she talked with him just like a friend would, marveling at how intelligent she was, as she spoke about social and political issues, analyzing them in quite an impeccable manner. When they got to the office, they only had to see the general manager for a few minutes before they were all allowed to go home to their family. Thank you, Sola. I'm amazed at your level of maturity and self-control and ability to make even the most uncultured man want to get a groove of himself. It has made me re-evaluate the very essence of the male-female relationship. Thank you for making me see the need to have my head thinking for me, and not my third member. You're one of a kind, he said, and she began to laugh. You make it sound like you're one who chases after everything in skirt. But you're not, Mr. Andy. I've had time to evaluate your kind of person, and I'm sure you're not a bad person. You were just missing your wife, and being a human, and especially a man, no offense intended, you were simply seeking an alternative to improvise for that moment. Someone that can make you quench the desires you have because you're thinking of your wife and she wasn't anywhere close to calm your raging storm. Or because you were hurt by something she said or did, and you needed to pass that anger off by laying someone available, pending when you get things right with your wife, or return to her sides, as the case may be. And that's why I had to help you. Yes, I had to help you because many men bring problems to their homes with just one intended fling, especially at that time they have problems with their wife. They could just get down with someone for just the purpose of getting off their anger for what their wife may have done or said, intending it to be a casual sex, only for so many complications to arise from there, Sola told him, and he couldn't agree less with her. You're a good person, Sola. And the man who'll eventually be the lucky man will not only be glad he got himself a beautiful and sexy bundle for a wife, your wisdom, intelligence, and ingenuity will make a whole lot of difference in your home, he told her. Oh, please go home, Mr. Andy. You'll make my head burst with all the compliments. Don't make me change my mind and decide to kiss you now for trying to kill me with flattery, she joked as she walked away, while he stood watching how her waist swayed as she walked. Amen. This girl is beautiful. Look at how endowed she is. How can one person be this intelligent, disciplined, and proactive, yet a dude let her go for another? If I wasn't expecting a child, dear Lord. He muttered as he made his way to Chukwudi's office. He walked into Chukwudi's office to see him, because he was shocked that even though colleagues had been trooping out to welcome his team, Chukwudi refused to come out of his office. Hey man, what's with you? Didn't you hear that your boss has returned? Andy joked as soon as he entered his office. Oh man, I see you're in high spirits. That's quite a relief. I didn't want to come out because you haven't been reachable for days now, and I reckoned our last call may have made you decide to go off radar. So I didn't want to come out and have you chop off my head right in the presence of all, making everyone witness your outburst and putting your job on the line. That's why I decided to wait until I can get you alone in your office. But what's up, man? You look too bright for a man who's been told about how his wife tried to seduce his friend, and how that friend of his was able to run away, only after he had touched some of her sacred parts, Chukwudi told him. Sadness crept into Andy's heart as he opened his mouth to talk again. It was a painful story he never wanted to remember, but he needed to let Chukwudi know that things were still as it should be with them, because he did nothing wrong. You know, Chukwudi, I was momentarily close to a heart attack when you told me what you said that day, but I got over it with time because I knew it'd happen someday. It was something I was expecting, he said. He told Chukwudi he didn't blame him whatsoever because he was already anticipating that occurrence based on something that had happened before. They talked for a few minutes, and Andy told him he needed to rush home to see her and be sure she was still in his house. As bad as the situation is, Chukwudi, she's still pregnant with my first child, and even though I know things can never be the same with us again, I can't let her know I'd be sticking to my mother's decision of sending her away when my child is weaned. These past days, I've had time to reflect on a whole lot of things, and I'm ashamed to admit that my mother was right. Marriage isn't just about sex, and yes, a woman who has zero control over her sexual appetite, no matter her physical, financial, and spiritual endowments, shouldn't be one a man ends up with, no matter how unfortunate that man wishes to get. I should have listened to my mother when she expressed her concerns about Madonna's libido and how it resembled her mother's, but I was carried away by the fire in our sex life. I was so sure I'd always keep her sexually satisfied and ensure she never had a reason to think of someone else. Well, I guess I never considered my job and the possibility of getting unavoidably away from her. But it's all good now, Chui, he told his friend. His mother was expecting him, because she had remained in touch, and though they couldn't talk about his wife, she always wanted to know how he was doing. He begged her to help him inform his wife that he was coming that day, and she told him she'd inform her, but his mother that he knew will surely not have told her, because even the quick acceptance to tell her told Andy she wasn't going to do it. When he got home, Madonna wasn't at home, and his mother seemed very happy that he met her absence. After the hugs and welcome dances, his mother didn't even have the patience to wait for him to finish unpacking before she began to tell him about why he needed to get Megan, a charm known to disgrace any married woman engaging in extramarital affairs. "What do I need Megan for, Mama?" he asked, afraid that he had seen something that he hoped she wouldn't see. And she began to speak in riddles, telling him a tale of a woman who allowed a particular stump claim her 2 pots and asked if he didn't think the woman was foolish. He was still trying to understand what she was talking about, and trying to let her see how tired he was from a long journey, when Madonna came into the house. She seemed shocked to see Andy, and though she had rushed to give him a tight hug, she wasn't really as enthusiastic as she used to be when she saw him. Andy heard a mocking laughter and turned around to see his mother looking at Madonna in disdain. He had to walk into his room, because even Madonna seemed uncomfortable as his mother continued to laugh without humor. "Daddy, I don't want to stay here anymore. Since you left here, a lot has been happening, and Daddy, if you love me, you'll send Mama away or I'll go away," Madonna told him as soon as they got into their bedroom. What could have happened between her and my mother that is beyond the ordinary? There was no love lost between the two of them as I have always known, but what could have made Madonna become so apprehensive in my mother's presence, he thought. "My Donna, can we talk about this tomorrow? I'm very tired and need to rest now," he told her and tried to hug her, but she pulled away and told him there was now a condition for him to touch her. "Okay, Daddy, I'll wait till tomorrow to talk about something that is troubling me, and you'll also have to wait till tomorrow before you can touch me. I have been trying to be very accommodating and calm, but your mother doesn't want me to breathe even when I'm pregnant, and you're okay with it. And you think I have to continue living like that?" she grumbled and rushed to the other side of the bed. Andy looked at her, wondering why she was so sure he wanted to do anything with her, just because he wanted to hug her, and didn't know when the laughter escaped his throat, making her turn around to look at him in shock. "My Donna, I'm your husband and I have the right over your body. I can touch you whenever I want because you and the baby inside you are mine," he told her. "Don't sound so sure of things. You don't know so much about Daddy. I cannot belong to you when you simply can't take care of my needs. You left me without a phone for almost 2 weeks, and because I had to use your friend's phone to reach you, he could insult me as much as he wanted. I couldn't reach you for so long because neither your mother nor the people I asked to lend me their phone agreed to allow me call you with their phone. And your mother decided to create a scene just because I went out to seek for who I could borrow a phone from to call you, and you're laughing now because I have suddenly become a comedian in your eyes," she complained in tears. "Madonna, if you weren't trying to make life difficult for me, why didn't you activate the phone you were given? If you didn't have other reasons for seeking people's phones to use, why didn't you just use the phone as a means of reaching me, when you know I'll certainly buy you whatever you want when I return?" he asked her. "Can you hear yourself, Daddy? I, Madonna, your wife and soon-to-be mother of your child, should use a cheap Android phone when girls of my age who do not even have someone as rich as your housekeeper are using bigger phones?" she asked him, pouting childishly. "You insisted on not using the phone because it is an Android phone. Madonna, the phones you asked those people you mentioned to lend you to call me, were they all iPhones? I do not have the details of what transpired between you and my mother, but I'll ask her tomorrow. But for now, I need to sleep," he told her. "Oh, so it's Madonna now? I knew it. I knew someone must have kept you so busy all these days. No wonder you didn't bother to try to reach me. And don't you dare think I'm too young to know things. I saw the way that lady in your team was looking at you that day. I knew even before your flight took off that you two will have no time for the assignment that sent you there because of sex," Madonna said. "Oh, please quit whining already. You just told me that you could be someone else's when I said you're mine." "Yes. You said I shouldn't sound so sure of things I didn't know, which by inference means you could be someone else's. Madonna, I don't want to think about the things that happened before right now, but I'll decide on what happens after our baby is born. Good night, he told her and switched off the bedside lamp and turned to sleep. He was trying to sleep, but Madonna was sniffing and making disturbing sounds. Then she began to talk to herself. So it's true. You have been sleeping with her, so much so that after 2 weeks, you don't even have the urge to touch me. Now I'm supposed to just stay here and bear you a child, and become nothing but a baby-making machine, someone you only touch when you want a child, while she's the one you expend all your energy on, she complained. Madonna, there are still some women out there who understand that sex isn't the only thing they were created to offer. The lady you are insulting by bringing her name to your lips is one of those women I just talked about. She is interested in far better and more important things than sex in a man, he told her angrily. Fine, I'm going to leave here now since the only value I have is sex. I'm going to get rid of this pregnancy and find someone who'd describe me like you have just described her. Someone who will love me, even when he has a pregnant wife at home, but will choose to lose his urge and desire for her, just because of a new face, she said, pulling the duvet off her. Wait, did she say get rid of this pregnancy? Hell no. I can't let her do that to me. I have to do whatever I can to make her stay until my child is born, Andy told himself as he grabbed her and tried to pacify her. Do we have to fight? I just arrived, baby, and wanted to sleep, then see how we can get things in the right perspective by tomorrow. You know I love you, and will do anything to make you and our child happy. Please don't make me have to die, thinking about you leaving me, he told her, holding her to himself, and felt her relax at his sweet words. He knew what she wanted him to do, and also knew it was the only way to make things okay with him again, but he just couldn't get it up. So he tried to kiss her, trying to remember the time she did the crazy things that always had him going as hard as a rock, but his mind was straying and he was thinking of Sola, hearing her tell him the destination of a relationship shouldn't be determined by sex. He was kissing Madonna, but there was no passion in it because he was thinking about how it felt when he kissed Sola in the club that night. Madonna must have noticed that he was having a hard time getting it on, so she claimed his length with her mouth. But the more she did the things she did, the more he was getting repulsed at what was going on around them. He was getting hard and losing it almost immediately, and before he knew it, Madonna flipped off him and lay down quietly on her own side of the bed. He went to work the next morning as early as he could, not really because he was afraid of his boss, but because he wanted to see Sola when she arrived. Plus, he didn't want to face Madonna, who obviously very mad at him for not being able to get it up and keep it. He was feeling so ashamed actually, that at his age, he couldn't sustain the desired hardness, but again, it wasn't much of a worry because even as he sat in his car, driving towards my office, he was getting the kicking below his belt, just remembering how Sola's lips felt and how submissive she had been, while he kissed her. But why does it feel like she loved the kiss just like I did? He asked Chui as they sat to analyze his feelings. Andy had come to see Chui as a very analytical and critical person, because all he seemed to have told him about Madonna were gradually coming out the way he had permutated. I don't know how you were able to do it, and that's why I'm finding it hard to believe that you, Andy, a married man, was able to kiss the uptight goddess, when we the eligible bachelors have all been shuffling our feet in vain, he told him, making Andy laugh so hard. Well, Sola isn't exactly the way you know her. She's everything a woman should be and more. Jokes aside, Chui, do you know that when I lost control and began to want much more, this girl not only politely turned me down, she schooled me in a way that made me so ashamed of myself, he told his friend. Chui and Andy talked some more about his feelings for Sola, and he told him about how his night went with Madonna, and how for shame he had to run away before she woke up. You know, Andy, you're a kind of man I've never seen before. You travel for 2 weeks and the woman you call your wife, and assume is carrying your baby, tries not only to seduce your friend, and you're still calm enough to get on the same bed with her. Chui asked. I'm just like every other man you know, Chui. The only difference is that I'm a man that has stayed with a woman who I called wife and imagined that I already had 2 children, only to return to not having anyone. And this girl Chui, she's the one bearing my first fruit, so even though I felt so bad about what you told me, and all, I can't do anything about it until my child is born, he replied. And what if before the child is born, you realize that you have been on the way fathering another child that isn't yours? Chui asked, making Andy nearly have a heart attack. And why would you ask that, Chui? Is there something you're not telling me? Because if it's just about what she did now, that wouldn't change the paternity of my child, Andy asked him, his whole body shaking. I didn't want to talk to you about this, Andy, at least until your mother told you herself, but my guy, that girl has been sleeping with a particular guy in your hood, and neither my threat of watching her and reporting to you, nor your mother's intense monitoring stopped her from going to him, until we found out, Chui said, making his heart begin to supply blood in excessive amount. Tell me it's not Gabra, Andy said, gasping for air, and Chui's eyes widened in astonishment, and he knew he had guessed right. How did you know this, Andy? Did your mother tell you already? He heard Chui ask, before everything went blank. When he regained consciousness, he was in the company's sick bay, and a nurse was standing beside him, while Sola was sitting on the bed by his sides, looking down at him. Chui was standing with his arms folded over his chest and his eyes looking up at the ceiling. He had an angry look on his face, and Andy could tell that he had been too worried about his condition. He couldn't ask Chui the questions that he wanted to ask because the nurse was still taking his vitals, but as soon as she walked out, he asked Chui to tell him in details what happened the day he saw Madonna with Gabra. He looked at Andy, then at Sola, as though to ask if he was okay with him talking about it while she was there. It's okay, Chui. Sola is my friend, and I would still tell her what made me blank out eventually, he told Chui. Chui told him everything that happened. How he had come to his house against his wish that day because he called him over a dozen times to please see his mother and be sure Madonna was okay, even if he didn't want to see Madonna. He visited his house and found out that Madonna wasn't at home as always, and he was talking with Andy's mother about where she could have gone to. We were talking about how late it was in the night, and a pregnant married woman was still outside her home, getting worried about the possibility of something bad having happened to her. We couldn't reach her because, like you know, she chose to stay without a phone. Then your mother became genuinely worried, because she knew how you'd react to the news of her going missing while we watched. And your housekeeper couldn't keep it in again. She told us she had overheard your gateman speaking with a young man that works in the neighborhood about how his boss's wife has returned to his bed since he traveled, Chui narrated. What? Sola screamed, covering her mouth with her hands. And that young guy working in the neighborhood is no one else but Gabra, right? Andy asked. Yes, Andy. I'm sorry to say it, but your mother had insisted that we went there to be sure she was there, and I also wanted to be sure she was safe before I went home, so we went there, led by your gateman, and met them, Chui said, trailing away in the end. He closed my eyes and tried not to cry. Crying wouldn't change anything actually, so he chose to hold it in. It's not her fault, Chui. Yes, I really can't blame her. All the blame must be on me, because I caused all of these for myself, he found himself saying, and his two friends had to check me again, to be sure he wasn't out of his mind. He told them the story of the very first day he caught Gabra, his former gateman, in bed with Madonna after he had started sleeping with her. My heart nearly chattered in 1,000 places as it dawned on me that the two have been dating long before I deflowered Madonna the night I got home drunk, but they were yet to get the opportunity to have sex. Turns out that after she got deflowered and Gabra found out, he was very angry with her for not allowing him, yet she allowed me, which led to her agreeing to let him have her that day, as a sort of compensation. Madonna looked sincerely sorry to have let Gabra sleep with her in my house, when she had threatened me with exposing what I had done that first night, and literally compelled me into a romantic relationship with her. We had a make-up sex that day, maybe because I was obsessed with her body, and didn't want to let her go, even when I saw the reason not to do so. She promised never to do a thing like that with Gabra, and I even had to go the extra mile to fire him, just to keep Madonna for myself. One thing led to another, and I heard that Gabra had got a job in the neighborhood, so I had to ensure that I kept Madonna sexually satisfied all the time, to make sure she never had a reason to go back to Gabra. I guess I never looked ahead to see that a woman who doesn't want to be kept can't really be kept. As soon as my baby is born, I'll send her away, to be with Gabra in that gatehouse he lives in, he told them. And what if the baby isn't yours? Forgive me, Andy, but I think you should know the truth now. I'll be a terrible friend to have heard that dude banging your wife and making her accept that she'll return his child to him after the baby is born, and not tell you. That girl only made you marry her and chose to make you think the child is yours because of the luxury you can offer her. She's more at peace with the other dude whom she says does it better and at any time she wants it. Your mother almost killed that girl that night after she told her the baby isn't yours, because your mother had been cursing her for carrying her grandchild within her filthy self, while she ran around with a gateman. It took a very long time of persuasion and cajoling for her to allow Madonna get into the house that night because I wanted her to allow you take the decision. Question that girl and have her tell you the truth herself, Andy. You don't deserve to get bitten twice, Chui told him before he walked out. Sola was dumbstruck, not finding the right words to say to Andy, so she just wished him well and walked out, using the files she needed to clear from her desk as an excuse to run away. When Andy arrived home later that day, Madonna was nowhere to be found. She dropped a letter on his table, telling him how she wouldn't keep staying with him, when he couldn't even give her satisfaction at his age. Do not bother to look for me, because by the time you get this note, Gabra and I must already be on our way to his hometown in Sokoto, where he wants me to remain until his child is born. Yes, his child. When I found out that I was pregnant for Gabra, I chose to make you father the child because I wanted all the luxury you can offer my child, plus I was enjoying everything you do to me in bed. But for 2 freaking weeks, you left me without sex, and your friend who could have just filled in for you before you returned made me go back to Gabra, because he simply refused to help you. It's not my fault, but after Gabra gave me something to match his sexual appetite the time we started having sex, and I've always been like this, having the urge to get down so often. We were good at first, and I was able to stay away from Gabra because you were able to give it to me. But now that you can no longer make me feel like a woman, I have to go, because I can't trade my satisfaction for all the luxury in the world, her note read. His mother was inside his room while he read the note, and he was expecting her to mock or scold him, but she did neither, only pulled him into a hug and asked him to dry his tears. This is good riddance to bad rubbish, my son. You should be grateful to God that she left on her own, and with her life. She has just paved the way for the right person for you, the one who'll bear you your own biological child, his mother told him, and he wished he was ready to meet anyone else. It's been over a week since Madonna left Andy's house, and he didn't get to hear from her as he imagined he would. And in all these times, Chui had been doing everything to ensure that he wasn't lonely or had the time to think about some of the things he knew would worry him, but he had already made up his mind never to get hurt again. Sola had become their mutual friend, so most times, the 3 of them hung out, talking about general stuffs and joking about so many other things. On one of those days, Sola had told a story about how she had lost her entire savings to a man whom she thought she was engaged to, and got them all emotional. From what she told them, they were engaged to be married a few months later, and she had agreed to his pressure of transferring everything she had into a joint account to enable them plan their wedding. But wait a minute, Sola, in the part of the world where we come from, isn't the man saddled with the responsibility of taking a wife and bearing the cost of whatever it takes to make the ceremony hold? Are 2 of you expected to co-fund the wedding? Because I don't understand why you saw it imperative to send all your money towards funding a wedding where a man is meant to be the head, Chui had asked, and Andy couldn't help but nod in agreement. You're right, Chui, because from the little I know about your people, a man who intends to marry a woman has to prepare fully, because he who wants to be the head must take the paddle even before the boat is made to begin its journey of soaring through the water. It is not totally different here as well. A Yoruba man also takes pride in ensuring that the woman he brings to his house remains his wife, and not his business partner, Andy concurred. That's true, Andy. I knew he was meant to do what he had to do to get us married, but I also knew I was earning far better than him, and he wasn't very confident as a man, plus there was no way his little savings was going to get us married. Then I saw the need to give him a boost. So the idea of the joint account was to create a financial pool for us, where either of us could draw from, without feeling lesser or greater. I loved him so much, and at that time, I felt I wouldn't be able to survive for a day without him because he was my first and all. So even when I saw the signs of insecurities in him, when I noticed he was getting distant from me over time, I just didn't want to give up because I believed things would change as soon as we got married, and I make him see how loyal and submissive I can be to him, even with my money. There were times I even suspected he was having a thing with the girl he later married, but I just didn't want to dig deep. I felt if I pressed a fleshy part of a human body too deeply, I would meet a bone, and I wasn't prepared to see anything that could take me away from Bio Dun, so I chose to look the other way. Alas, that which I tried to run away from still found me. It was just like seeing a clay pot cracking so badly, and you keep patching it, hoping it would somehow magically get okay and hold water. You waste so much of the extra clay you could have used to make a new one, to try to patch that old one, only to still find it broken and totally out of use. Bio Dun dealt me a terrible blow with what he did, because not only did he break my heart, he broke my bank and made me start like a pauper again. It would have been a little less painful if Bio Dun hadn't married that girl right in our neighborhood and got people systematically mocking me and practically making a joke of my devotion to him, but I chose to see the positive side. It was a good thing that Bio Dun left me to be with someone he didn't have to always be in competition with, because rather than try to compliment me, Bio Dun was in a covert competition with me, always trying to bring me down, to ensure he was above, rather than strive to get better and rise above where I was. And that wasn't what I needed. It's not what I need as someone who wants to make a mark in the sands of the, while keeping my family where it should be, my priority. Sola told them, making Chui and Andy nearly cry, thinking about how some men make women see all men in a bad light. It's a good thing you didn't end up with him, Sola. You'd have ended up sending gold right into the hands of carpenter. Yes. You would have had a carpenter who knows nothing about how a gold should be treated or used have to keep it, and that would have been tantamount to abuse, Andy said, and they both agreed with him. Well, that good is better off left beneath the earth than getting exhumed only for the wrong hands to waste it, Sola said, her face mirroring her pains. They had to talk for so long, trying to make her see how everything that happens in life is for a reason. When they left that bar they had gone to that day, Sola was feeling much better, and Andy could see that she felt lighter. She'd drive out first, and because Andy hadn't come out with his car, Chui had to send him home before going home himself. Chui told him as they drove in his car towards Andy's house that he felt so bad that he had also judged Sola so harshly before. It's true, Chui, we often judge people so quickly, and conclude so easily over someone's case because it's convenient for us to do. And that's why even as humans we find it so easy to complain about how someone has done something and why the person should have done it the other way, just because we're not the ones wearing the shoes. I know how I'd have reacted to the story of a man impregnating and marrying his stepdaughter, but since I was the one wearing the shoes, I felt my actions were justifiable, and even up till the moment that girl took a walk, I still didn't see anything wrong with a man keeping a girl for a wife, when her mother had been in his bed for years. That's humans for you, Andy told his friend. They sat in his car at the entrance of Andy's house and had some moments of talk, then he asked him the question. Andy, back in the States, did you truly kiss Sola? Chui asked, looking too serious for his understanding. Yes, why? You want to kiss her too? Andy asked, trying to make a joke out of it. Yes, Andy, I want to kiss her. I like that lady a whole lot, and I've been doing everything I can to get close to her, even before you two traveled. I gave up because she made it clear that she wasn't ever going to give any man a chance to get close to her again, and I was even beginning to imagine that she may like girls, you know what I mean. But now that she has become this free around me, now that she is so accessible and ready to mingle with me, I was thinking, would you be mad if I asked her to be my girlfriend? He asked. Chui. I really did like her a lot and kissed her because I wanted her to want me the way I did back then. As a matter of fact, after I returned to Nigeria, I was wondering how I was going to keep seeing her face every day in the office without desiring to kiss her again. But after all you told me about you and Madonna, after all I went through in the hands of Madonna, I don't know, but I kinda developed cold feet towards getting intimately involved with anyone again. So if you're asking to know whether I'm still interested in pursuing a romantic relationship with her, then the answer is no. I prefer to be alone than to get involved with another woman again. Another heartbreak may shatter this poor heart of mine forever. Plus, I think being just friends with Sola like we are now would be more rewarding than getting too close for comfort. So Chui, you go ahead and tell her how you feel because whatever I felt for her back then has somehow been relegated to a state of no relevance. When I'm ready, I'm going to opt for adoption. I won't try to raise a child with the hope of it being mine, only to have my hopes thwarted again along the line, he told Chui. He gave Andy a big hug and asked him to wish him luck, because he was going to ask Sola to be his girlfriend the next day. After Chui drove off, Andy became so weak he couldn't walk steadily to his room. His mother saw him as he walked in, and even though he had tried to maintain a better disposition as he got inside the house, his mother could tell that something was troubling him. "Good evening, Mama," he prostrated and made to walk away, but this woman called his name sharply, making him turn around in fright. "So, Andrew, you're going to kill yourself because of that possessed girl that God has liberated you from? Her evil mother left you in pains, and chose to also leave her daughter to continue from where she stopped, and in your uncontrolled appetite for sex, you fell hook, line, and sinker for it, marrying that maniac, against all reasonable logic. Providentially, God chose to send her away and save you from the troubles she was brewing for your life, and now you think I have to sit by and watch you kill yourself because of her? What is it with you men and sex? Tell me, Andrew, apart from sex, what else did she offer you that has made her so unforgettable that you want to keep mourning her departure? For how long am I going to keep telling you that God himself chased that girl away from your house and your life? So now, Andrew, instead of thinking of how to get yourself a good wife and give me grandchildren, the ones you'll be able to raise before old age comes knocking on your door, you're here weeping over a deliverance God gave you on a platter of gold." His mother yelled, obviously tired of calmly begging him to move on. They had talked about Madonna's issues several times, and he agreed with everything she said about forgetting Madonna, and even told her she was in his past. But what he didn't tell her was that he had decided not to try again. So while she scolded him that night because she imagined he was thinking of Madonna, he was too lazy to argue or to even keep a thing to himself. He didn't know how to explain to her that Madonna had shattered his hopes of ever having his own kids. But he just found himself telling her everything about Sola, and how he was going to stand by and watch his very good friend live happily ever after with the woman he has come to like so much. His mother listened to him like a friend, but when she told him Sola was his and was going to remain so, he became angry with her. For a moment, he thought she was like a friend, a true one, that will tell him the truth and admonish him to move on, but there she was, giving him false hopes and adding to his sorrows. He thanked her and walked to his room. The clothes on his body found their way to different parts of the room, as he continued to fling them with annoyance, finding an avenue to vent his frustration. His phone rang as he sat on his bed, but he was also too reluctant to take the call because he was so sure it was Chui calling to tell him about Sola or to ask him how he could make her accept him, so ignored the call. The phone began to ring again, and he answered, intent on telling him to let him be, but he heard a feminine voice. How could he not recognize her voice? How could he not know it was her, when as soon as he heard her say the simple hello, his heart began to thud heavily. Hello Sola, heard from Chui yet? He asked her after they exchanged the regular pleasantries. No, is there something he should have told me? Did you ask him to tell me something? She asked him amusedly. Yes, and I'm sure he'd see you soon, he told her, but the sound of excitement in her voice as she told him she'd be waiting for him made Andy nearly break down in tears, even before he hung up. Why does she seem so happy that Chui was coming to see her? Has she been secretly wishing he asked her to be his girlfriend? Oh God! So Sola has fallen in love with Chui. Very soon now, they will get married and have kids running around their home, and I'll be the one left in cold and loneliness. Why is my life like this? Maybe if I had told her how I feel about her, it would have made her consider being with me. Who knows? She may have even given me children that are biologically mine. Why is everything about my life like this? He soliloquized, turning restlessly on his bed, and unable to sleep. That night, when he finally fell asleep, he had a nightmare. He saw Chui walking down the aisle with Sola, but she kept looking at him and cursing him for making her remain sad for so long. The priest officiating the wedding asked him to come to the altar and asked why Andy allowed the best man walk the bride to altar while he stood watching. He tried to explain that he was afraid about certain things and wanted to have his friend walk with her and be sure she'd truly walk to the altar before he walked there to take her, and the priest got so furious with him and called some youths to flog him for being a coward. He woke up running from the heavy strokes of cane he was getting from the dream, and even after he woke up, he was still sweating profusely. What could this mean? How can I be beaten so badly because I didn't walk down the aisle with her when she's sounding so happy to hear from Chui? Was it a bad decision to tell Chui I wasn't feeling a thing for her when I'm dying to have her tell me she loves me as much as I love her? He asked himself. It took him a long while to get prepared for work, and a longer time to decide to walk into his office without going into her office to see if Chui was there. As soon as work closed, he ran off, not willing to stay by and see Chui and Sola walking out hand in hand to tell him they're now together. He rushed into my car and was about to drive out when he saw Chui and Sola seated in his car. She was smiling happily, and the look on Chui's face made Andy see that they were so happy with whatever it was they were talking about. He drove out immediately and made to rush home, but a thought struck his mind, and he found himself reversing and driving right back to the office. Oh God! Don't let me find them kissing already, he thought as he rushed back to the office. Sola was sitting on the bonnet of Chui's car, but Andy couldn't see him anywhere around. It seemed Sola was crying, but Andy didn't want her to see him. She must have been overwhelmed by Chui's proposal, he guessed, so he walked into his office and decided to drink while he waited for Chui to meet her up. He must have drank too much and for too long, because when he heard the door to his office open, he was way too drunk to see clearly. The light in his office was on, but the person approaching him looked more shadowy than a human. The figure at the door walked closer and closer to him, until it was stooping over him, and he had to close his eyes. Andy! He heard her call him sharply, and his head began to spin as he tried to pitch the voice with the figure. The voice was unmistakably hers, but the body kept changing to different things when he tried to focus his gaze to see her face. He would have told her his worries, because he felt whoever the person standing in front of him was, it wouldn't be Sola, but she was making him feel she was up to no good. No. Sola would certainly be kissing Chui and telling him how much he meant to her. He tried to speak to her, but tears began to run through his face. His throat was too dry to talk, so he lifted my bottle again, but she brushed it off his hand in annoyance. "What the hell is wrong with you, Andy? You sit here drinking yourself to death for the sake of someone who's happy with the guy she has chosen for herself. If this isn't foolishness, I wonder what is. But how can someone as heavily endowed with intelligence and good looks be this miserable?" she asked in annoyance. "Look, whoever you are, I want you to please get out of my sight. You are in no position to decide when I'm foolish or wise. I didn't choose to love her. I didn't tell my heart to pant after her, but here I am, mourning her departure from my life, while she stays beside him forever. I am mourning because I know I will never love anyone else again, and it hurts so badly that I had to stay with my eyes wide open, until she got whisked away. My life will never be the same again," he said. "Oh really, so for the sake of someone so undeserving, someone who doesn't give a damn about you, you're going to drink yourself to the grave. The fact that you have someone who loves you so dearly, she no longer has reservations, notwithstanding," she asked. "I can see clearly that you're deaf. I do not want another, and I do not want to love and be loved by another. It is her I want, and now, she is gone forever, don't you understand?" he asked, looking at the figure in anger. "So much for love. This is why I chose to stay with my guards on, to shield my heart from this hurtful emotion called love. Back then, I was running away because I felt it was the right thing to do, considering the fact that you were married. And now, even after she left you, she still has this much control over you. So much that you chose to throw me away to any male species available. All of these because you have chosen to stay perpetually tied to the lust over her body and not consider other things that should matter to reasonable people. But Andy, does it not count for a thing that I love you this much? Doesn't it matter to you that I love you too much to be able to keep my composure?" she asked him. "I'm sorry, miss, but I love someone else. I love her like I have never loved anyone, and I'm going to find her tonight after he leaves her, and remind her of our first kiss. Yes, I have to go find her because I won't be able to live on if she stays forever in the arms of that guy," he told her, and he almost felt pity for her as he saw her begin to cry. He wanted to hug her and ask her to move on because she'll certainly find someone that will love her as much as he loves the woman of his dreams, but he couldn't get up. "Why does love hurt so badly? Why would you love me so much you had to go to the length of using her type of collagen and went as far as trying to mimic her voice? Yet, my heart is beating just for her, even when she loves someone else?" Andy asked. "I don't know, Andy, but I'll leave now. And I want you to know every step you take and every day you live, that Sola loves you with all her heart," she told Andy and made to go. "How dare you mock me? Because I told you I do not want you but want just her, you have to mock me, telling me she loves me when she's with another. So if you know Sola loves me so much, why are you professing love for me, when you know she's the only one I love?" Andy Contrariru asked the lady in annoyance. "What are you talking about, Andy? Are you sure you haven't totally lost it?" she asked. "You are the one who has lost it. You knew I was married to that girl that planned to ruin me. You also know that Sola loves me and I love her with my everything, and you still have the effrontery to try to confess love that I do not want from anyone. I have tried to be civil enough with you, lady. Please leave at once. I want to be able to mourn Sola's total departure from my life, without any form of interference from anyone. And don't you imagine that all these full breasts and body you're flaunting in front of me is enough to make me choose a woman ever again in life? I chose Sola for so many reasons, and even though I have foolishly asked my friend to go ahead to declare his intentions to her, I am going to make things right, when I have the chance to," Andy told her, and the daredevil had her hand over her mouth for a while, looking at him with tears in her eyes. Then she walked back to him, squatted in front of him, and said, "You scared me, you little punk. Don't you ever put a drop of alcohol in your mouth again. You made me imagine that the one you said you love so much is your ex-wife." He looked at her as she squatted in front of him, and it seemed like he was seeing Sola. "Oh God, why is this girl messing with my head? Get off my face. You're making me see the woman of my dreams in you," he told her. "Perhaps this would make you know it's me," she said, then claimed his mouth immediately. "What is this? Why can't I send this woman away? What if Sola walks in and finds her kissing me? No, Andy, this girl sure feels good to kiss, almost as good as Sola, but it isn't her," his head told him. "Still don't recognize me? The touches doesn't remind you of anything?" she asked him. "The kiss does feel good, lady, but the reason I'm seeing her and feeling her is because she's in my head. It is because I'm wishing Sola is here to kiss me. And believe me, my dear, the days when my body controlled my head are over. I want Sola, and just her, so even if you try to kiss me like her, it won't make any difference. There's more to desiring someone than what her body can offer, he told her, remembering Sola's words. And rather than getting offended or frowning in pains as she had been doing since, she smiled. And I told you that in front of my Chicago hotel room after you kissed me crazy in the club because I believe it to be true. I told you on the day we returned from Chicago to run home to your wife or I would kiss you, and now that you have no wife, but the alcohol won't let you see me, I'm going to kiss you, until I've been able to kiss away the effect, she told him before she descended on him with a ferocity he can't explain. She was kissing him, but she had tears in her eyes. She was holding his face while she kissed him, but her hands were shaking. Did she just tell me of the kiss in Chicago? Wait a minute, this is Sola, he thought, realization hitting him as he looked at her again. Sola! My Sola! Oh my God, this is you! He screamed, pulled her back to himself and made his move. It was now his turn to kiss her. Because when she kissed him earlier, he was afraid of responding to the kisses of a stranger and getting fooled by a kiss yet again. But now that he saw her, now that he noticed it was no other but his Sola, his whole body was quivering and ready to kiss her and show her the much he hasn't said. But while they were rejoicing in each other's arms, someone, somewhere, was brooding over his hard luck. Chukwi's joy knew no bounds as he drove home the night Andy gave him the go-ahead to woo Sola. He was whistling happily, chirping like a bird and dancing like a newly born goat kid inside his car while he drove. He got a fresh shave and looked his best as he prepared for work the next day, calculating his moves and lyrics for the showdown. From his point of view, Andy seemed very busy that day, so even during lunch break, they couldn't hang out as always. He felt Andy was truly busy until he saw him drive off after they closed from work without even as much as saying a word to him or to Sola. What is going on with Andy? Could he be angry that I told him about how I feel for Sola? He had wondered as he sat in his car with Sola. Sola and Chukwi were talking about general stuffs and she was laughing heartedly when they saw Andy. He was hoping he'd stop by as usual, but he drove away. Is he okay? Why does he seem so uptight since morning? It's almost as if he is troubled. Could he still be grieving for his wife that left him? Sola had asked Chukwi, looking very sad. I don't think so. Andy has gone past that. I'm just hoping whatever it is that's weighing him down isn't connected to you and I, he told her. How can that be? Oh, I get it now. Oh my God. Andy is such a clown. He must be apprehensive about how I'll react to what he said. You'll tell me today, she giggled. Chukwi's eyes widened in astonishment to hear that Andy had given Sola a hint that he'll speak with her. If Andy told her about my intention to ask her to be my girlfriend without telling her to run from me, it means even him, Andy, has truly gotten over the feelings he had for her. And if Sola is looking this happy as she anticipates what I'm going to say, that is certainly an indication that I am going to get a yes, he thought. Now would you quit smiling and tell me word for word what I've been waiting to hear for some time now? Sola had asked Chukwi, sounding as excited as someone that had just won a jackpot. Then Chukwi excitedly brought out the flower he had bought and handed over to her, before he began to give his love speech, telling her how he has always hoped she'd be his. Would you quit playing around and tell me what Andy asked you to tell me? It's okay to play every day, Chukwi, but not on the day I have prepared to get kissed by the man I love, she told him, looking angrily at him. Sola, I just told you how I feel about you, and you called it a joke? I poured my heart out to you, and you think I'm playing? He asked her, feeling very hurt. They both stared at each other for quite a while, imagining what was going on. Chukwi was in high spirits earlier, and she also looked very pleased about the conversation they were going to have in his car. In his heart, he had already visualized how he'd kiss her briefly in the car before driving to a nice place where they'd have dinner and then kiss like he always sees in the movies. His heart nearly exploded in pains when Sola told him she was only that happy because she thought Andy couldn't tell her about his feelings for her and had asked him to do it on his behalf. So you told Andy you were going to ask me to be your girlfriend and he gave you the go-ahead? Was he planning for all three of us to go into polyandry? Because I don't get it, she asked him, looking totally exasperated, and Chukwi had to tell her what Andy said, with the hopes that when she knew that he was no longer interested in her, she'd want to give me a chance, but it made her begin to cry like a baby. I love Andy so much, Chukwi. I'm sorry that you feel so much for me, but I only see you as a friend, and my friendship with you is purely because of Andy. How can he not be interested in me, when every day I keep seeing the look he had in his eyes before he kissed me in Chicago? How can he not give us a chance because of a girl that left on her own accord? A girl that loves nothing about him but his sexual prowess and financial powers. She asked him, crying like a baby. Chui was so hurt by her confessions for Andy that he felt like crying. How could she love him so? If she was feeling so deeply for another person, I could have waited and prayed that something bad happens to that person to give me a chance to be with her. But this is Andy, my friend. What sort of situation is this? If only I hadn't told Andy about this. If only I sensed that she could be this madly in love with Andy, then I wouldn't have tried to woo her and continued to love her from a distance. How am I supposed to look at the two of them tomorrow? Sola is very mad with Andy for allowing me to woo her, and Andy himself isn't looking any better himself. What kind of catastrophe is this? He thought painfully. Then he stepped out of the car and told her he'll go get something so they could go after Andy. When he returned, she was leaning on his bonnet and sobbing her heart out. It was a pitiful sight to behold. Damn! What clay was this Andy molded from anyways? How can the beauty we singles have been jostling for be weeping for his love this way? How can someone who has been married twice be having so much edge over the single and eligible bachelors? Chui thought as he walked closer to her. He had seen Andy get into his office, and even while he stood outside thinking of what to do, his office lights remained on, meaning he planned to stay for some time. If you want to see Andy, he is in his office. I've got somewhere to go now, he told her, trying to suppress his pain. Sola didn't even allow him finish what he was saying before she ran towards his office. Then Chui had to stand by his car to suppress the pain. He stood for a long while, hoping Andy would still maintain his stance of not wanting to get involved with her again. The imagination of her crying as she ran out of his office and getting into his arms to be consoled filled his head. He thought of how he'd hold her so close in the hug and find a way to kiss her. Maybe if she sees how well he can kiss her, she could change her mind. Over 30 minutes later, she hadn't come out, neither had Andy, so he decided to take a look and see what was going on. And that was a wrong move. He peeked through Andy's window and found them locked in each other's arms, kissing like their life depended on it. How he was able to walk to his car that day was a miracle, but how he was able to drive home that night will forever remain a mystery. It became certain to him he was not only going to hunt for someone to love him elsewhere, he was also going to hunt for a job too, because there's no way like hell he was going to keep working in the same office with those two. Such is life, he cried as he stood under running water that night. He thought of all that had happened that day, and how it ended as against how he hoped it would end, and fresh tears continued to pour. Andy, I have always got your back. I have always done everything to show you what true friendship means. And now that Sola chose you, he was saying, but trailed off. What do you think Chui will do now? He has been a good friend to Andy so far, but after what happened, do you think Chui will remain his friend? Will things remain the same between them? Will Chui successfully sabotage this newfound love? Find out in the next episode. If you can relate to any lesson in this episode, please give this video a thumbs up, and don't forget to leave your thoughts in the comment section. Subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell to get notified when I post the next episode of this very interesting and lesson-filled story.